Good evening, and I thank all of you for coming to hear the story of my new book. But it's really not a new book. I've been working at it for about 60 years, and it finally became a reality. But it's been a passion of mine all these years to see it happen, and it finally has. I guess everyone knows how old I am by now when I say I've been at it for 60 years. And my gratitude to NAASR for hosting this event, and to Barbara, my gracious thanks for her thoughtful introduction of me. She's been so involved in this book, going through massive corrections, writing the flyleaf and all, and I greatly appreciate her presence and her professionalism. After World War I, in 1919, Honorary Major Dr. Varaztad H Kazanjian of the British Royal Army Medical Corps stood before King George V in Buckingham Palace in London for investiture as a companion of the most distinguished order of St. Michael and St. George, one of the highest honors that the British people could give to someone who was not a British subject. He was a dentist of extraordinary skill. He was being honored for his remarkable services to the British Expeditionary Forces in France. His treatment of facial and jaw wounds had gained for him the reputation as the miracle man of the Western Front. In the following years, he was to build a legendary career in Boston as one of the foremost practitioners and teachers of plastic and reconstructive surgery in the world, and was a father of that specialty. He was born in a world far away from Buckingham Palace. It was in Turkish Armenia 128 years ago, as the Ottoman Empire was declining. He came from a long line of coppersmiths, or Kazanjis, as the Armenians called them. The Kazanjians had lived for 4 centuries in Erzincan, located in the western Euphrates River in the heartland of ancient historical Armenia, and they belonged to the upper middle class. The original name was not Kazanjian, it was Yerikian, but eventually because of his work it became Kazanjian. But the life of horrendous Kazanjian, his father, had a particular tragic life. He was a widower with 5 children, and he married a widow with 3 fatherless children, and out of this new union came 3 more children, and the first was Varaztad H, who was born in Erzincan on March 18, 1879. By the way, the first month, same month as Einstein was born. But within 3 years after Varaztad's birth, the family moved to Sivas, or Sebastia. There, true to the tradition, the father established a copper factory, and the family was well off. Varaztad attended a Protestant missionary school and a private Jesuit school, and he much preferred the Catholic education that he received. And he considered Sebastia, or Sivas, to be his home. And father died when he was 12 years old, and at the age of 14 he moved to Samsun, a historic and cosmopolitan port city on the Black Sea in Turkey. An older half-brother who was a commission merchant there took him into his business, but he didn't like it. He said I wasn't good enough, and he left. It was a time of great political turmoil for the Armenians, and as a boy of 15 or 16 in Samsun, he sympathized with a revolutionary group called the Kazanjians. And this was the first Armenian socialistic party founded in Turkey and Persia in 1887. Soon he was being sought by the Turkish authorities for passing forbidden pamphlets in the dead of night, end of quote. To save his life, an uncle smuggled him out of Turkey together with 2 half-brothers. When I left Armenia, he said, it was not because things were bad, but for political reasons. Now, I've been very friendly, as Dr. Kazanjian had, with a Dr. Joseph Murray, who was a Nobel laureate in medicine. And Dr. Murray has suggested, as he said, perhaps of this troubled childhood fleeing from the Turks, Kazanjian developed a special sense of caring. And I think that's true. Well, he was 16 when he arrived in Ellis Island in New York in November of 1895 with a bundle on my back and nothing else, not even a passport, he said. From New York, he was sent directly to Worcester, Massachusetts. In 1895, the thriving industrial Massachusetts city had the largest population of Armenians in America. There were 900. It became known as the Armenian metropolis of America. And the largest single operator of employer of Armenians was the Washburn Moen manufacturing company, the largest wire mill in the world. And there were actually 265 Armenians who worked there. And Varaztad worked in this mill, and it continued intermittently for until 1903. It was brutal work, with lost limbs and lost lives. And it was said that the mill sucked the blood and flesh of the workers. He planned on staying in America only enough to earn money. He wanted to go back. To Armenia. And this was the situation as late as 1900. I just want you to know that both my grandfathers worked in that same mill, in that wire mill, but their problem was that they went back to Husainabad and they were massacred. And they must have known each other. His passion for knowledge was so intense that immediately after arriving in Worcester, he began night school. He would later admit, for 7 years, I did not miss a single night. And he was a most avid reader. And there were stories of him taking a book with him and putting it in his lap as he was working in the mill. And as he recalled, at the wire mill, I worked 10 to 12 hours. There was one teacher who used to wait for me to teach me English after work. There are some nice people who help others, he said. One of these nice people who influenced him was the Reverend Deranian, who was pastor of the Armenian Protestant Church of the Martyrs in Worcester. He urged him to forget the idea of returning to Armenia and advised him to become an American citizen. He listened and therefore became more involved in the country. Now, on Sunday evenings, the immigrants would gather at this Armenian church. And on one instance, February 17, 1897, on the topic of reading and the love of reading, one of the speakers was Varaztad Kazanjian. He was only 17 years of age. And he is saying, and this is in Armenian, which I have translated from the old church records, it is by reading that man is able to appreciate beauty, the sublime, and the truth. And the minutes of the church say, it improves the mind, it refines the taste, and ennobles the soul. And he's urging his other immigrants to read. This is going to be the way up the ladder for you. Amazing story. But on Sundays, the immigrants would gather and they would talk about their future, what kind of work they were going to do in the future. Oh, he was 21, still in high school, didn't even have a high school diploma. And one of his wiser and worldly friends urged him to consider dentistry. And he said, you take dentistry, that's a good profession. Well, once he made this decision, he concentrated all of his efforts on this. He became a citizen, he moved to Boston, and enrolled in the freshman class of the English high school. Now, he's an adult. I was a man then, and at first embarrassed when I saw the children who were my classmates, but I soon said, what of it? The main thing is to improve my English.